Morning. 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 So who wants to propose a sub-word for the? Someone shout it out. How about fork? Fork. All right. This is don't fork the customer, because that would be painful as well. 3 steps to being a customer-driven business. I'm Jay, and I did actually leave a career in sales to join a company without salespeople. You could say that was a shrewd move because I had unlimited territory. I was the only salesperson in the company, unlimited territory. But Atlassian actually is a company that builds team collaboration software. So any Atlassian customers in the crowd? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We make software for teams, and our mission as a company is to unleash the potential in teams. We believe that all great human achievement is the byproduct of people working together. So we make products that you may have heard of, like Jira and Confluence and HipChat and Bitbucket and things like that basically help people communicate, create and share content, create and manage work and projects together. So that's what we do. For some perspective, because it's important, how many people work for cloud businesses in the audience? Okay, so most people here are cloud, because this is a talk that hopefully will provide some pointers to cloud businesses. But for perspective, we have about 50,000 organizations that use our software. And that's important just because it's a frame of reference for the quantum of companies that we're trying to make successful. Those companies are in 140 different countries, but the most important metric for us that we've sort of tapped into in the last couple of years is the number of active users of our software. And I'll talk about that, why that's important. So that's about 5 million, a little over 5 million monthly active users of our products on a regular basis. Our organizations that use our products include, NASA, and so the people there are working on shipping things to space, or Tesla, which is just about to ship the new Model 3, but not only changing the car industry, the automobile industry, but also the global energy industry. So 2 examples. Customer success at most companies is about revenue. It's typically how most companies measure whether or not their customers are happy and whether or not they're succeeding is sales. Like, how many dollars have we brought in? How many dollars have we achieved from selling our products? And Atlassian, actually, little known fact, before we became a software company, we were a customer support company. So Atlassian was founded as a company to provide support for an open source application server called Orion that probably no one has ever heard of it. I think it was predominantly built in Sweden. And our 2 founders are Australian. And so they stumbled upon an idea. They knew this technology really well, and they said, hey, let's create a company that basically provides technical support. What they didn't realize is most of the customers of this particular technology were in Europe. So here they were in Australia with a pager at the time, getting pinged from Swedish Telecom for technical help on this little-known application server. And they built a product called Jira to basically help manage the communication and issues and issue management between their customers, and then pivoted to become a software company. But so deeply ingrained in our culture is just this notion of customer support and customer success. The kind of early tagline of the company was legendary service, and it was something that was foundational to who we've become. We have 5 core values, one of which you saw in the title. These are the values of the company. And the one that kind of permeates a lot of what we do is earmuffs, don't fuck the customer. We think a lot about putting the customer first. And in the same way that Amazon famously has someone in their company in every meeting represent the customer's perspective, every decision that we do internally, every thing that we're doing as a company, we try to make sure is putting the customer perspective first. And even where you're supporting 50,000 customers and you can make a choice that might advantage one over the other 49,000 or 49,000 over the other one, we think really consciously about making sure that we're not alienating or not disenfranchising any one single company. So that's how we sort of define customer success internally. And we've been on this journey that I think a lot of you are on, where we've matured every successive year. We get a little bit more, more ammunition in the gun around what customer success means. To us internally and how we're going to use it to drive our business forward. And there's basically 3 steps that I wanted to share around listening, learning, and leverage. And this is basically a case study for us or what we've gone through. So step number one is around listening. There are 3 metrics that effectively we use to drive our entire business. And there's a lot of maybe smaller metrics below the surface of the water, but the 3 that are always above the water for us measure 3 very important things around how successful our customers are. The first is whether or not our customers are happy, and whether or not they're send a positive signal around the products that we've built and the software of ours that they use every day. The second is whether or not they're engaged and active, and the third is whether or not they're committed. And probably very familiar to you, the metrics that we use to track each of those types of sentiment are NPS, MAU, which is monthly active users, and churn. And you'll probably hear this a lot over the next couple of days, but these are highly correlated metrics. And a lot of times, companies will focus predominantly on churn, right? Like, what is our retention? How many customers are we losing? What can we do to fix the retention or the churn problem inside of our business? So they'll identify ways to listen to customers and figure out, like, when you quit, why did you quit? And let's try to focus on that. But actually, if you go all the way up to the top of the funnel, the most important leading indicator of health and of churn is happiness, is just NPS. Like, really measuring whether or not your customers like what you've built for them and like using it. And the more you focus on that particular signal, downstream, churn will often take care of itself. NPS is also a leading indicator of active usage. If you're not happy, it's unlikely that you'll be an active user of the product. And too often, companies tend to focus on the primary sponsor, the primary champion, or the primary advocate of a particular product. I always love to pick on HR software because I'm not the primary advocate of our HR management system, but I am a user. And oftentimes, just to pick on those companies, I know that they spend a lot of time trying to make sure that our HR department or their primary sponsors of their products are super happy and super engaged. And where there are problems, they go to them and they say, what are the problems and can we fix them? But I'm actually a user that's typically not very happy with that particular system, and they rarely ask me, what do you think every day when you're using that software? So NPS, I think, is for us one of the most important data points of the entire kind of funnel of health inside of our customer lifecycle. And you've probably seen this quote before, but typically companies believe that they're doing a better job of achieving customer happiness than they actually are. So this was a Bain study that said, of over 300 companies surveyed, 80% of them believed that they were providing a superior customer experience and their customers were happy. But when the customers were asked, only 8% of them actually agreed with that. And we found this to be true too, because for a long time throughout our history, we did exactly what I just described. We focused on the primary champion and the advocate. So this is just a shot of our customer user conference. The folks that come to this conference are typically really enthusiastic about learning what they can do with our products, how they can get smarter about spreading them and evangelizing what they could do inside of their companies. For a long part of our history, this was the group that we pulsed and surveyed on a super regular basis. Right? How happy are you with our products? How happy are you with our company? What could we do better for you? And they told us, but typically when we asked the billing and the tech, we refer to them as billing and technical contacts, or the primary champion. When we ask them, like, how happy are you with the level of service or the quality of our products or the things that we provide you, we had an NPS in the ballpark of plus 40, like super good score. And for many, many years, we patted ourselves on the back and said, our customers love us. This is great. But what we realized is, that there's a massive untapped audience underneath the surface, behind those advocates and champions and this sort of word of mouth army that was working for us inside of their companies, that we weren't actually measuring very effectively. And so a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, we had a massive initiative to go directly to the end users and ask all of the people who our products were selected for, right? They didn't necessarily select them. How do you find our software, and what could we do better for you? And so this is just an example of where we, inserted a very simple dialogue into the product, and we could talk for hours about some of the science behind this and like how you have to measure how or measure very carefully how actively and often you're asking end users for feedback. But very simple NPS question. Tell us whether or not you'd recommend this product to a friend or colleague, and then importantly, give us some qualitative feedback. So we do this across all of our products, across more than 3 million users. And what we found, maybe not surprisingly, is we had a much lower level of happiness among those customers. And so in our case, 25 points lower. So we have a lot of work to do. For the people for whom our products were selected for, they're a lot less enthusiastic about our products than the folks that selected them. Again, maybe no surprise, because if I selected it, of course, I'm going to run around the organization and champion and say this is the best thing since sliced bread. Those are the metrics that we track. NPS for end users, incredibly important. I'm going to shift to MAU really quickly. MAU for us is also, we believe, the most important in a cloud business, the most important leading indicator of potential sales and revenue. The more active users you have, the more opportunity you have to monetize those users in the future. And we believe that only active users gain value from what you've built for them. So if they're not happy, they're probably not active. If they're not active, they're not actually leveraging and using what you've gained. Gaining more users is oftentimes the focus of a lot of companies. I want more and more MAU or more daily active users. And so certainly that's celebrated. Likewise, when you lose active users, when individual users in an account churn out or become inactive, that's something you have to pay attention to and mourn. And all types of usage, dormant users, churned users, active users, disengaged users, should all be tracked and studied. And so inside of our company, there's a big effort around the science of MAU. And MAU is a type of accounting. And there's all different types of active usage, people that return or that you resurrect, new active users that you've acquired, active users that you've grown from an existing instance, people that become dormant for whatever reason that you can then resurrect. And so I guess the takeaway here is if you're running a cloud business, and probably this is both an initiative and a challenge for marketing, as well as engineering, as well as customer support and success. It's an all-company endeavor to make sure that there's a group of people that are thinking about all the aspects of active usage and how you measure that. And then final point is around churn. And so churn for us, again, is lagging. If you don't fix the happiness of your end users and the engagement of your end users, it's unlikely you'll be able to really do anything with churn. So focus on those two first, and probably churn will take care of itself. The lesson for us around churn was mostly around double clicking. So like a lot of companies, we have a little survey form that basically, when you cancel an account or you don't renew again for another month or another year, you get a little dialogue that basically says, hey, where are you going and why are you leaving? And so we want to understand that. It's a little piece of qualitative feedback. And so here's an example of that where the two most prominent reasons that customers were quitting us were actually things that we would encourage. I'm actually going from one product to another, and so I'm still with you, but I've stopped this product. Or in some cases, my use of your software was temporal. My project's done, so I'm going to put it on ice, I may be back. And so those are actually things that are okay for us. And when we look down at this hot pink, hot pink for us was around performance. And so when we tried to get this prioritized inside of like product roadmaps and with product managers, they could say, oh, it's important, but it's sort of a small slice of the pie. But when we double-clicked on reasons that were acceptable to us, what we saw was performance actually was a double-click reason that compelled an action that may have been acceptable. Like I moved to another product because the performance of the product that I moved from wasn't acceptable to me. Or my project was complete. And when you said, well, give us another reason or give us a reason why your project ended, it would be, well, performance was a part of it, right? So this became a way for us to take different measures below the surface of big ones and help prioritize improvements and features that we wanted engineering and product management to pay attention to. So that's step one around listening. Step two is around learning. So we have, probably like a lot of you, different ways to organize customers and gather qualitative feedback. And where NPS is a really powerful quantitative signal, the qualitative things that your customers are going to tell you are even more powerful, because that's actually where you can get specific recommendations for what to fix and what to change. Where you just get a quantitative number, you know you've got work to do, but you don't necessarily know where to begin or what work to prioritize. So this is an example of an Atlassian user group. We have them all over the world, and we try to bring customers together and grab beer and pizza and talk about what we could do better and what's going well. We bring product managers in here, so it's sort of a more intimate way to talk with customers. Not the most scalable way. And so we found, again, that NPS survey where we're getting qualitative feedback is a more scalable way to take some of the qualitative sentiment and figure out how to prioritize. But the challenge we had is we got 80,000 unique statements, unique single sentence indications of either good, bad, or ugly that customers were giving us every month. And so we needed a way to basically systematize or categorize that into something that was more useful for us. And so we came up with something that's relatively simple. There's a breakout session that one of my colleagues is going to give today specifically on this. But we call this our RUF framework. And so RUF stands for R, reliability, U, usability, and F, functionality. And just the notion is that most of the feedback we're going to be able to dump in one of these three buckets, where people are going to tell us the performance, the uptime, the quality, security, things that are related to reliability aren't up to the standard that I would deem acceptable or I'd be happy about. Usability, maybe users find the product too complex. They want it to be simpler. There's features that they might tell us that that don't exist, but they do exist. They just couldn't find them. And then functionality are gaps in the product that people are telling us that they want us to address. And so we took those 80,000 pieces of feedback and we categorize all of them every month into this framework, where then we can tell product management and engineering how to prioritize the things that we're going to put on the roadmap. And that brings us to step 3, which is really about leverage. So how do you take all that feedback and leverage it into change and leverage it into improvement? One of the things that we did early on is we wanted to galvanize the whole organization around how important NPS was as a signal and how important the qualitative feedback that we were getting from millions of users were to understanding how we could improve as a company. So we did something a little unconventional. We at our all-staff meetings around all of the offices, we printed out individual sheets of feedback. So this stack of paper, every sheet in the stack of paper is a unique set of survey results from the NPS survey from end users, where we would see the score, we would see what their role was, what product they were effectively scoring, and then that statement that they gave us about the product. And what we did is for a couple of months at every all staff, we basically hand this out at the beginning, and then we said, read it. Take 20 seconds to read it. When you're done, hand it to the person to your left and take the one from your right, because the one you're grabbing is a completely unique set of feedback from our end users. Again, not from the people that you've met at user groups or you meet at a user conference. These are people you typically don't see that are using our software every day. And that had a really powerful effect where people looked forward to that handout where they could spend 10 minutes basically passing them around, and it just became visceral and real. And so that was kind of a way that we sort of used defibrillator paddles in the organization to get them tuned into what this was. We wanted to also kill less trees, and so that kind of transferred later into an automated email digest that everyone gets every week inside of the business, where we can see the quantitative metric and how our scores are changing over time, whether NPS is getting better or worse for individual products, and then the qualitative feedback along those products that customers are giving us. So quick little snapshot. The really important thing, by the way, that we learned around NPS is it's really hard to change. And we're still trying to figure out when we hear that performance, as an example, is an issue and that customers are maybe unhappy because of the speed of a product. They want it to be faster. When we really focus a bunch of energy on that in the roadmap, at what point do we see an NPS score gain, like the quantitative benefit of the work that we've done? And we're still trying to figure out, at least in our business, the exact calibration of when we hear X and we do Y, when do we see the gain of that? What we have seen, which is equally important, is all of the qualitative feedback that we categorize into that rough framework. So one of the ones that we heard was performance. I mentioned it a couple times. And so we had a lot of qualitative feedback that got categorized into that R bucket, the reliability. And so in roadmaps over a series of releases, that was at the top of the list, and we really focused on it. And even though we didn't see the quantitative NPS measure go up, what we did see was the qualitative feedback in R went down. And so we took that as a win. We said, well, what customers, the end users are telling us is we haven't yet gotten to their happiness bar, but we're starting to uncover different things that are in the way of that. First, it was a bunch of stuff in R, and maybe a bunch of other stuff in U or F. And so that kind of for us translates into specifically roadmaps where we, in front of all of our customers, can say we've heard not just you as the proponents and advocates of our products, but all of your end users, what they're telling us we need to fix in order to make this better. So that's it in summary. I guess the big takeaways are your end users matter. If you're not pulsing end users, become champions of doing that. There's a lot more that you'll learn about your products and your customers and your market when you do that. I think software companies don't do that enough. We typically really focus on the champion or the buyer or the sponsor, and that's a really important advocate, but we also have to go beyond them to the people that they're selecting, buying, and championing for. Change takes a lot longer than you may realize. We're still trying to figure out exactly where we can put coal in the fire and see a quantitative change, but we are measuring kind of the qualitative impact. Definitely create a system. I think if you're going out to end users, you're welcome to use Rough if it works for you. There's a breakout session today that talks specifically about it in great detail, so I encourage you to go see that. And then also just celebrate the wins. And so where you do see, for us, the qualitative feedback that we got in that reliability column go off, that's something that we celebrate, even if for that particular product, the NPS score didn't move. That's still something that we want to celebrate. And then send around great pictures of funny babies. All right, thanks very much.